Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome to more awesome gut health conversations. I'm Megan, and with me here today is Traci Potterf, Dr. Traci Potterf. Hey, thank you so much for coming on here today, Traci. I really appreciate it. And yeah, like I know we had to have some conversations about Zoom, like getting all this together today, but you know what? We're here, and I'm really excited to talk to you. So, all right. So basically, everybody, let me just introduce Traci really quick, and then, of course, I will let you talk to the woman herself, and then she'll be able to tell us more about her, because Traci has some really cool, like, just different ideas and things that I've talked to her about. And so I feel like I know her so much better than you guys will get to, but what's really cool is that you'll get a chance to hear more about kind of just some different ideas that she has, not even just about gut health, but also kind of health in general. And so I'm really excited to have her on here today. So Dr. Traci, she has a background in medical anthropology, which is kind of different for most of the people I've talked to so far, and I think it's really cool. And you know what? I'm gonna turn it over to you, Traci. Could you tell us actually more about like how you got into what you do, and just tell us more about your story, because you have a fascinating story.
Basically in college, I was looking for something that would allow me to travel and still have stable income. And I had friends whose parents were college professors, and I thought they had a really great life. So I thought all I need to do is get a PhD in something cool and then just learn and teach about it the rest of my life, and then I'll be happier than most of the grown-ups.
Right.
But I fell in love with cultural anthropology, and I did. I got a PhD, and in my PhD program, I was in a joint program with UC Berkeley, and as I became more and more interested in the connection between lifestyle, culture, and health, I enrolled in their joint program with UCSF Medical School in medical anthropology. And so I did coursework at UCSF Medical School and went to Grand Rounds, and then I also did coursework at UC Berkeley. And what I really started to notice is how much political and economic factors have a stranglehold on our access to information about health and how to heal ourselves, about truth, what's true, what's not true, and how that gets twisted or spun by, different interests. And I also became interested in how cultural wisdom is being lost through industrialization. And so I've had this deep desire to merge like cutting edge science and traditional wisdom. And what's cool with a lot of maybe not so mainstream, we call it independent science, is science that is not funded by special interests. So it's, like pharmaceutical companies actually have to fund the research testing their own products. So that's kind of the fox guarding the hen house, and it's definitely a huge financial liability for these companies, right? And but there are a lot of funding agencies and ways people can get funding. And I also started looking at research outside of the United States and Europe and Japan and India, Africa, like all over the world, where people are trying to figure out how we can use food, lifestyle, and herbs and things like that to heal serious illnesses. A lot of that is born of need and in developing countries, because they may not have as much access to pharmaceuticals or biotech. But the cool thing is what a lot of these studies are showing is that we can use the way we eat, the way we breathe, our consciousness, the way we move, herbs and supplements to change our cellular biology in ways that are even more powerful than a lot of what pharmaceuticals are capable of, because they're synthetic molecules, and so that we don't have co-evolutionary relationships with synthetic molecules because we just made them up, So one of the ideas that my business partner Skaya and I put forth, that our business is currently called Spoonful of Paradise. One of the really important things we want to convey to people is the complexity of nature and how we've all evolved as part of nature. Every single organism, mineral, plant has been part of this larger context. And it's this web of life is very nuanced and complex. And it's based on, hundreds of thousands of years, even millions of years. Depends on what level of order magnitude you're looking at. I mean, this is a lot of evolution, or if you want to look all the way back to the start of the universe, there's a lot of complex evolution. So what happens when you take molecules that we just kind of made up, and you put them in a living system, it's kind of playing Russian roulette with our biology, with our genetics, epigenetics, with the molecules that make up our human cells, but we're also as much microbial as humans. So we have something called a microbiome. It's called a functional organ, but we have as many microbes as human cells. And so there are viruses, bacteria, parasites, yeast. Well, we say parasites for something kind of negative, but they're actually amoebas and protozoas and stuff that can be useful. And there are also studies showing that maybe, for example, in rural Brazil, like in the Amazon jungle, there are populations that are being called by Westerners Yanomamo, but they're still finding groups that hadn't had previous contact. And these people are living with things that would make us so sick. They have microbes and, protozoa worms in them that are actually, they're able to have vibrant health with all these creatures living as part of their microbiome, whereas we've kind of sterilized, sanitized, and damaged our immune systems to the point that we're not very tolerant of such diverse microbial worlds. So it's actually become a concern. So there are a lot of top researchers that are looking at how, as we're evolving, the complexity of our microbiome is diminishing, and with it, there's a direct correlation with loss of vitality and resilience in biology. And it's happening to animals. It's happening to pets. People's pets are having a lot of the same disease as humans are.
Yeah.
Right? So Sky and I like to look at things from an evolutionary perspective. We like to look at the big picture. And one thing that's been really cool about science in the last several centuries is it's been kind of picking things apart. Like, how does this work? And I don't know if you've ever taken apart an electronic and then couldn't remember how to put it back together. And that's kind of is we're learning to pick things apart, but we're like, wait a minute, how is it all connected? And so a lot of the mainstream, because it's tied to commerce, which isn't a bad thing, but they're these big corporations focused on profits. And so I think we all know that often profit takes precedence over human well-being. And that's unfortunate, and I'd like to see it change. I think there are a lot of companies and corporations that are trying to change that. So I'm very optimistic that this can change. But for now, it's kind of a big problem. Because if we wait for pharmaceutical companies, processed food companies, and the rest of the media to get on board with human welfare, then a lot of us are going to just suffer and be really sick unnecessarily. And the cool thing is there is a lot of cutting edge science that's merging with conventional, traditional wisdom that's teaching us ways of living, thinking, breathing, moving that are pleasurable and joyful, that actually bring us vitality, that actually can heal complex and often supposedly incurable conditions like autoimmune diseases, cancer, heart disease, ovarian cysts, prostate issues, whatever, go on and on and on, obesity, blood sugar issues. There are just so many, and it depends on the person and everyone's different, but as part of our job, we get to see people as a regular matter of fact when they apply what we teach them and what the information they get from really root cause-based practitioners we help them liaison with. When they combine the lifestyle medicine with a root cause-oriented practitioner, they're able to go into remission from things that we're told don't even have cures. For example, just my business guy, he had an autoimmune disease of his liver called primary sclerosing cholangitis, and he was supposed to have a liver transplant, and that was supposed to only last 10 years, and he was pre-med, and he just was like, I don't want to, he didn't like that answer.
The system has no answers for me, essentially.
So he actually changed his lifestyle, started meditating, doing yoga, changed his diet, and he went into remission within 3 months from this thing that supposedly isn't curable.
Wow.
Been great ever since. He, not to say he doesn't ever have some health things to work on. And it was a struggle for him, and it was a process, and it wasn't that easy. Sometimes we skip to and then we lived happily ever after, but we still live in bodies that will go wrong, and it's always a process. Healing is an up, down, upward trend, so it can be struggle and pain and fear and anxiety in it for sure. We've all lived through that. I've had a lot of health problems myself, which is how I got into this. My mom also had Crohn's disease. So we got her into remission from Crohn's disease for a really long time. And then I had a weight problem at one point, and I accidentally.
I was going to say, do you want to tell us a little bit more about your journey? I feel like I've heard so many wonderful things from you, and I'm just like, it was hard to get to it all, but I love what you're talking about, how you do what you do. I love the work that you and Skye do. Looking at all this from an evolutionary standpoint, I think is so important, looking at how we've evolved with nature and how that is important. So I'm just wild about what you're saying. I'm loving this. But yeah, could you tell us just a bit more about your journey? How did, your story, your health journey?
So as I'm on this where I'm learning about all these things, I just very interesting because there are things I think I want to be teaching as a researcher and professor. I developed health problems. So I initially, just in college, had a weight problem, and I moved to Spain, and I just ate better food than I ever had in my life. And it wasn't even the healthiest food ever. It was just way better food than I'd ever eaten in my life. I moved around. I danced I was happy. I was engaged. It was very interesting. I was, polishing off my Spanish skills. I was developing new friendships, relationships, and kind of in a way reinventing myself in a new culture. And I was there a couple years. I was there a year, came back, finished college, went back another year. And in that process, I lost 50 pounds and I was never on a diet. And so what that taught me was how much of this is about lifestyle, but it wasn't just what I was eating, it was how I was living. And that was really important. So I think food is one of the most important first places to start. That's why we have a course called Eating for Health and Happiness. That's like a really good place to start. But we have a longer course called Closing Your Nurture Gap, A Path to Radical Healing. And I'll explain what a nurture gap is in a moment. But it goes through all the layers of quality of life, because those are the things that Sky and I have had to address to heal ourselves. And when we've worked with clients, we've just seen over the years, if people don't address, their sleep, their relationships, their communication skills, which is part of the relationships, if they don't address it's the way they're living and their schedules and, how they feed themselves and how they think about food psychologically and all these pieces of this puzzle, it's like a combination block. And if you only get one of the numbers right, it's not going to open, right? So we have to address, we call it from the micro to the macro. We like calling it healing from cell to soul. So we can work with people anywhere from like looking at their genetics and, their methylation, their metabolism, their biochemical processes, their organ health, all the way up to, just the whole person and their emotional well-being and their connection to other people, our connection to the planet. So we're looking from the micro to the macro. And what we realized is if you really look at all illness on any level of evolution of matter, or if you look at atoms, molecules, genetics, epigenetics, which is how certain genes get turned on and off, so to speak. A little oversimplified, but that's kind of how it's
kind of the gist.
We won't get into methyl tags right now. So anyway, and then you work your way up to organ systems and how the organ systems work together, the whole person, and then how we're connected as humans living on a planet and a universe. If you look at all that and you look at where there's imbalance, where there's pain, where there's sickness, it's because there's some nurture that isn't happening. There's some unmet need that's not being addressed. And so if we're poisoning our environment, it makes us sick, right? If we're toxic with each other, it makes us sick. If we put toxic food in our mouth, it makes us sick. If we don't get enough sleep, or we don't sleep at, a balanced time of day, our circadian rhythms aren't lined up with natural light or the earth's rhythms, it makes us sick. And so if you just look at how our bodies work and what they need nurture. And we need to have a broader awareness of how I love taking things apart and seeing how they work, but we have to put everything back together and see what a system that's out of balance needs to come back into balance. So sometimes you just kind of turn off the fire alarm, you're not going to put out the fire. If you're standing on a tack and you just take painkillers, you're not going to get the tack out of your foot. So what we're really interested in is getting to the root causes, which usually multiple factors, and helping people see how they can fall in love with a new way of nurturing themselves. And we call that healthy hedonism, which is about using pleasure. Speaking of evolution, we are evolved, we are wired for pleasure. And pain is nature's way of telling us something is wrong and that there's some kind of unmet need. That's what pain is. And we get mad at our bodies and get angry at the pain, but the pain is a messenger and it's trying to invite us to love ourselves. And so we really need to rewire our brains by changing our thinking at how we're looking at this. So that's why we have such a strong conviction that if we want pleasure, then we want to take care of our bodies, because then we'll be in pain if not. So to us, healthy hedonism is not just doing something that feels good right now, but doing something that feels good now, but that will also keep us feeling good hours, weeks, months, years, decades from now, so that we experience healthy aging. We have a long disability-free lifespan, and we have good quality of life, right? Because we want to be healthy and happy. That's what we want, and we want to clear the mud off the windshield so that we can live our best life possible. And one of the gut health is so freaking important for this is that we can't be healthy and happy with an unhealthy gut. For example, the gut's the root of our immune system, and so if our immune system is sick, we get things like cancer, autoimmune diseases, chronic inflammation, pain, body weight issues, and just as much underweight as overweight. So if you don't mind me hopping into the gut health topic.
No, I was just going to say, really quick. So I love that you're hopping into gut health because that's absolutely where we're headed, and we do need to talk about that. But I have to say, I love what you're saying about healthy hedonism. Like when I first started talking to you, that was such a cool concept, like such a neat way of putting it, because so often we hear people being like, okay, I'm going to go work out because I feel awful about myself, or I'm going to eat this like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like doing all these things for maybe not the right reason, and kind of guilting, shaming ourselves into health, which that never works. And so I love this healthy hedonism thing.
Yeah, we call it shitting all over yourself. I should do this. I shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
It's gotten to the point for Sky and I, and so many of our clients and friends and family, that we've been a little contagious to. And just people who already have this orientation for like-minded that we hang out with. What we've all discovered is that we're so in love with this greater understanding of our connection to everything, from the micro to the macro, this feeling of connection, this feeling of being part of something bigger than ourselves, this feeling of serving something bigger than ourselves, and this feeling of serving our bodies really as a temple, as something sacred.
Mm-hmm.
Not feeding things to ourselves that we wouldn't feed, like whoever your most honored guest would be. Like if you imagine the person, you'd be like, oh my God, this person's coming to dinner, I can't believe it. Would you give them what you feed yourself? Or, so yeah, so to really revere ourselves and love ourselves, and we are just in love with the way we live and the way we eat, and we're constantly tweaking and adapting, and we struggle and we hit hard spots in life, and we have to learn new lessons because there's no end to our evolution. But what happens is that we can develop a toolbox and a set of tools that's ever expanding, that makes each time we go through something rough or we get sick, we can come out of it faster and faster, and we get to where we're preventing situations left and right. So there's so many things we don't even have to experience because we didn't go there. We chose something different, and it's pleasurable and it feels good. So if your idea of healthy sucks, like it isn't comfortable and you don't like it and you're in resistance to it and you feel like you're trying hard but not able to stick with it, then something just needs to change. And it's not bad it's just like, it's not about failing or getting it right. It's about getting more of what you want or less of what you want, and you get to decide. It's your life. You're not being graded. It's just you get back through sensation and emotion. And if the sensations and emotions we're feeling feel awful, that means there's some kind of unmet need we need to tend to. And not to feel bad about it, but just to really tend to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is so good. I love this. And so I feel like we're kind of redefining what it means to be healthy, and kind of, putting back in healthy, like good associations with being healthy. So I think that is so important what you're doing, and I love it. So now let's jump over into gut health specifically. So you were saying that it is, one of those foundational things, so important. So yeah, please talk to us more about gut health, like its importance, and also, and we'll kind of move over into that, but also how it relates to mental wellness, if you wouldn't mind.
Definitely. That's super.
Yeah, you kind of can't talk about it without getting into that. Yeah.
So just to wrap up and put a bow on top, the whole pleasure thing is, what feels good, we'll stick with it. If it feels good, we'll keep doing it. If it feels bad, we're not going to stick with it. So it's just so crucial to find things that feel good, so we fall in love with them. If we're not in love with and passionate with, and sometimes it's a process to fall in love with something that is unclear or that you've had confusion around, but as you get clearer and clearer, a direction, a path unfolds and makes itself more and more clear, and then it's something that it's just so easy to fall in love with because it just helps you feel good, and when you feel good, you want to keep doing things. So much diet advice out there is just like, it's bad advice. It doesn't work. It doesn't work with dieting. We're not really designed to diet. We're designed to nourish and nurture.
Well, it's funny, we're already on a diet, right? So it's just depending, it's just all about finding what's right for you.
Exactly. Yeah, like the standard American diet versus healthy hedonism diet. So one of the things I learned early on is, especially when I got into Chinese medicine, because I had a lot of gut problems myself, and I also have had toxic mold poisoning, which made me really, 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 really sick. And I can get more into that a little bit later, but so I've had my share of health problems. My mom had the Crohn's disease, which really got me interested in gut health. I've had gut issues. My whole family has, most people do, honestly. Like living in the United States especially, or really anywhere in the world in a very industrialized environment, you're under a lot of stress, you're eating, taking pharmaceuticals, you've had antibiotics ever. Maybe if you weren't breastfed, maybe you didn't have vaginal childbirth, like any of those factors and more can, childhood trauma, like trauma is
any kind of trauma,
typical life. So whether it was like battlefield PTSD or an abusive childhood or traumatic interrelationship, betrayal, like pain, we all have, there's PTSD has a huge spectrum of severity, and there are single incidences that cause trauma, and there are also chronic conditions that cause trauma. And so many people, a lot of the research I've looked at says like 70% of people have some kind of notable trauma that's affecting their health and their gut health and their nervous systems, and, you know, just creating chronic inflammation and disease. So much of these comes from what Sky and I call it toxic stress. It's a combination of toxins or things that, well, they come from inside our body that our body needs to get rid of them. And then there are also like toxic chemicals in the environment that are not part of our evolutionary biology. So nature can make poisons, humans can make poisons. Our bodies, when we get rid of cellular waste, and, you know, we make waste, right? So all those things, if they don't get out of our system, too many are coming in, not enough are getting out. That's toxic stress, but also toxic thoughts, toxic beliefs, toxic relationships and situations and work environments and work schedules. Those are all also toxic stress.
Yeah.
So all those things affect gut health, all of them. And so we like to look at gut health on many layers and see how those layers are connected. So for, you know, we'll take it apart and put it back together. So we need to look at, you know, the cellular integrity of our digestive tract. So the organs, the tissues actually need to be healthy and functioning well. If the cells aren't working, the tissues won't work, the organ won't work. So the organ system won't work. And so the person won't work, right? So anything we eat that causes inflammation literally to the digestive tract is going to cause a problem. So a lot of things like sugar, gluten's kind of, I'm not going to get off down the gluten rabbit hole. Like some people have tolerance to gluten, other people don't. And it's something that seems in most people to diminish with age. It just diminishes at a different rate for different people. So some people maintain oral tolerance into their elder years, other people lose it in the womb or never had it to begin with, and everything in between. And so, but the research I've looked into on what gluten proteins do in the intestine is they do make micro tears in the intestinal lining in everybody, but just some people heal up really fast and their immune systems don't freak out about it, whereas other people do freak out about it. So their bodies, their immune systems. And so there's gluten, in many cases cow dairy, sugars, anything with additives, preservatives, things sprayed, anything with glyphosate or Roundup sprayed on it, pretty much any GMO crop will do damage to the intestinal lining, make micro tears, which will actually cause something called leaky gut and chronic inflammation, food sensitivities, bloating, weight gain. And some people, if they can't absorb well, they get like weight loss and get really sickly, but a sickly kind of weight loss, not healthy. So, and like I said, a lot of people will actually get such dysbiosis or an imbalance in their microbes in their gut and in their whole body that they actually gain weight because of that dysbiosis. So there are those mouse studies where they do fecal transplants from an obese mouse to a thin mouse, and the thin mouse becomes obese, and vice versa, from thin to obese, and then they can get that mouse to lose weight. So our microbes in our body are another layer that if we kill off what's beneficial, then, you know, I think one of the things that was an aha for me is that these microbes actually are a functional organ and they do things that our human cells can't. Like, for example, my understanding is that there's nothing about, you know, our human cells that's able to break down nightshades and digest them, but there are microbes that can, and apparently it can take one course or, you know, just a couple courses of antibiotics to wipe out those species, and then people develop an intolerance to nightshades and develop symptoms like eczema or psoriasis or things like that, when, you know, really the problem isn't the food, it's the gut health.
Yeah.
System. And so it doesn't mean you don't get off those foods for a while you're reactive, but you want to heal, you can enjoy those foods again. And some foods are easy to get back when you have sensitivities. They're easy to get back, and other foods, you know, you might have to stay off of them, and it just depends on the person. We're all different. So, but a lot can change. So food sensitivities are a little different from allergies, and they can change over time. And very few people have food allergies. Most people have sensitivities. The majority of people have some kind of because the majority of people are living in a way that's causing inflammation in their gut. So there's the gut, there's the microbes, then there's the neurological functionality.
I was just going to say, let's see what the connection is to, you know, mental wellness here.
There's the migrating motor complex, and that's what moves things from the time you chew and swallow, what moves everything down through the system. We know about peristalsis in the intestines, but there's an overall neurology that moves from mouth to anus. And if that moves too fast, too slow, it can cause a lot of problems. And a lot of what's moving things through are neurotransmitters that are made in the gut. And so okay, let's say we take antibiotics, not only are we killing off beneficial microbes that might be doing crucial things for us, like one of the things might be methylating our B vitamins, which is super crucial. If you've ever heard of the MTHF genetic mutation, some people call it, for MTHF, they call it the mother effer gene, to try to remember those letters. But a lot of people have that, and you would think, why would nature give us that? But there are microbes we're born with that are able to do that for us. But when it takes like a round of antibiotics, we wipe it out with antibiotics, and then the microbes aren't there to do it for us. And so then we start developing a lot of medical conditions and addiction, and even exacerbation of autism symptoms, like all kinds of things, problems detoxifying your body, tendencies toward inflammation. Like there's so many problems that can come from just that one genetic mutation that isn't being supported by our microbiome. So it's really like, we're playing, again, I like to use that Russian roulette metaphor when we take antibiotics, because I've told you, Megan, in previous conversations, like I'm hungry for some evidence of how we can recover fully our microbiome, and not only recover the microbiome we were born with, but recover the microbiome that humans might have had before we started kind of messing ourselves up. So our previous generation, right? So I'm looking forward to how we can figure that out. But in the meantime, what those studies I've looked at have shown is when people take a single course of antibiotics, they recover most of it, but they lose 7 to 9 species. Now, that may seem like not a big deal, but if those 7 to 9 species do crucial things for your body, or your body weight, or whatever, like I've had people take antibiotics for UTIs and gain 30 pounds. You know what I mean? And so maybe it was 2 or 3 courses or whatever, but it's just like you never know. When you're killing your beneficial microbes, you never know. And so like Scott and I like to really share about how we can use plants and certain probiotics to actually combat infections more effectively than pharmaceutical antibiotics, which I think have a place on the battlefield, or like if there's imminent organ loss, imminent amputation, what,
extremely acute conditions, right?
If you have a cold, kid has an ear infection, UTIs, things like that, just even like open wounds that, like I've had people use herbs and, natural treatments for, I don't know if I'm supposed to be saying this because of liability or whatever, but, people had some sepsis and like streaking infected wounds, and were able to take something like Cryptolepis or CSA formula, which is Cryptolepis, Alcornian, Pseudocuta, and actually it knocked it back within hours. And they were told by their doctor had to take antibiotics, or they could go septic, it could kill them, or they could lose a limb or whatever, and they were able to knock it back. So I've just seen so, like, you have to kind of learn to trust the herbs by experiencing them. So maybe not waiting till you have something really serious.
Yeah, try not to wait till then. Yeah, earlier the better.
Amazing outcomes from really serious infections through the use of herbs when antibiotics and such weren't even working. So these herbs, these plants have evolved immune systems to fight bacteria, viruses, parasites, and yeast. And they're very broad spectrum, so they kill all those things, but they don't harm a healthy microbiome, because the plants, it doesn't make any evolutionary sense to evolve phytochemicals or plant chemicals that kill your healthy microbes. So they've evolved chemicals that kill the so-called the pathogens, the things that compost damaged tissue back to soil, right? Not that they're bad, they just compost things back to soil, but we don't want to be composted back to soil while we're alive, because that's what makes us sick and infected. So we don't want that. But we need to stop damaging our tissue, which invites in those microbes, right? And we can those plant compounds that are what Skye says at the cutting edge of the evolutionary arms race. They've evolved, to, the latest mutations of these microbes, or, any plant that gets picked and made in a tincture, it has very recently been in the earth, like evolving with living microbes, right? And
That's right. Plants are intelligent. And so it's a very intelligent solution.
Yeah, very intelligent. To me, it's the most intelligent solution.
Yeah.
There's a place for biotech for sure. But this is like, for most.
Well, it's like you say, it's cutting edge because these plants have evolved with it, with these different, microbes or whatever. And so, they've evolved to have these responses very quickly. I mean, they have to, otherwise they're dead. So yeah, they're very intelligent.
Exactly. So I like how you put the plants are very intelligent, nature's intelligent. Co-opt that intelligence from their immune systems and use it from our immune systems. A lot of stuff, and it's really cool. So,
Yes.
so toggling back and forth. So yeah, so the microbiome, the neurology, and the tissue integrity are all super important. Managing, like, so we say manage stress, but changing both the amount of stress we're creating in our lives and our toolbox for how we deal with it, like those together, that's, kind of managing stress, reducing stress, toxic stress of all kinds, but also putting in what we need. So we want to get the bad stuff out, but we need to get good stuff in, because nutrients are what build our tissues, protect our tissues, and repair our tissues. So plants are super important for that, but also amino acids from, like, if you're vegan, that's cool. Like, I'm just saying that animal products that are very high quality, I'm not cool with factory farmed animals or fish or seafood, but if it's something that's wild, pastured, that kind of thing, those amino acids actually help with phase 2 detoxification. So we need, whatever your predilection, whatever your evolutionary body kind of tends you toward dietarily, there's a lot of wiggle room. So there's not one diet religion that's the right one. We have to find what works for each of our bodies with our own evolutionary context and our own immediate changing needs, right? Like by season, by what's going on in your life. There's so many factors that shape what works for a person. So within the realm of, like, intelligent eating, there's a lot of wiggle room. And it's important for people to know that the nutrients we put in our body, there are medics, there are builders, there are construction crew, our protectors, there are Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, like they're everything. So if we're not getting the best of the best, then, we're abandoning ourselves, we're hurting ourselves. And so when you put all that picture together, so let's take someone who's under a lot of stress, not getting good sleep, up on electronics late at night, eating a lot of restaurant and packaged food, maybe like struggling in their personal relationship, overwhelmed with their kids or whatever, their pets, whatever, and struggling financially, and these things that normal humans go through, and having often just negative limiting thoughts about what they're capable of or what's even possible for themselves. You add all that together, and people get sick because of those things. So, but we also get sick from pathogens. Like, there have been issues in Hawaii where people are swimming in the ocean, and after rain, and there's some sewage spill off that ends up in the water, and people are getting giardia and me a couple of times. So even recently, some people are getting. We live in a microbial world, so it's not to say we want to get to the point where we're never exposed to pathogens or infections and we never get sick. We just want to build an immune system and a cellular biology that has the capacity to handle these things optimally, and we also want to have toolkit for finding ways to heal these things, diet, lifestyle, that are going to successfully resolve them, not just short-term, long-term, and really keep us strong and resilient and not tear us down. So we're really trying to minimize anything with side effects. So me personally, I just prefer not to use anything that causes side effects, negative side effects, I guess. I want good side effects.
Yeah, of course.
But to try to avoid things that cause negative side effects, and and only use something like that if it's like really worth the price, right? A lot of people, I hear people say, like, I don't want to use an antibiotic, but my kid was sick or had an ear infection, or it was my third UTI and I just didn't know what to do. I was in so much pain. And it saddens me, people don't know there's a whole arsenal of herbs that they can use.
Yes.
So that's something I like to teach in workshops, and we teach in our coaching with people. We really want people to learn to fall in love with these herbs, not just the food and the healthy hedonism lifestyle, but the healthy hedonism toolkit, the nurture toolkit that going to help you work with and not against your biology. There's so many ways we can change and influence our biology, from our thoughts to herbs to food to every movement.
Redefine your first aid kit.
Yes. Anyway, so yeah, I like things like that.
Awesome.
So after all these layers of health issues and even emotional health struggles that I've been through, also just severe anxiety. When I had all the gut problems and the chronic inflammation and pain, I also had severe anxiety and definitely in and out of some depression and hopelessness, right? So the weight problem and blah, 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 blah. So I basically had a lot of health problems, and I've chosen to try to use it as a gift, as much as I've been really angry and frustrated and exhausted by it, and as much as it's really sucked and I've been scared and terrified and didn't know what to do, until I stumbled into functional medicine, functional and integrative medicine, and Chinese medicine and Ayurveda, and even like a lot of what I studied in medical anthropology. And until I started understanding the politics of knowledge and having a lot of compassion for doctors. My dad was a doctor. He was so limited in what he could do. Like, doctors have like 3 guns to their head, I like to say. It's like the insurance companies, are they going to get paid? They're limited by the medical board. which is controlled by the pharmaceutical companies and biotech. Not to say there aren't good things about those industries, but there's a looming shadow side to those industries as well.
Mm-hmm.
For putting profit ahead of human welfare, and then just fear of lawsuits, fear of litigation. Right. So when you're a doctor, you're like, they put you in almost like this straitjacket and say, now heal people. And it's just, they're not given a fair toolbox. And some doctors like to get out of the system and educate themselves and do something different. But a lot of doctors are understandably terrified to do so. And a lot of them we've interviewed, and they don't want their identity revealed. We've had doctors take our online course and have rave reviews and wishing it could be integrated into Western medicine, but they literally want us to use their real name in their testimonial, or even interview them in any way where they could be identifiable because they were afraid of backlash. So there's a lot of fear happening for a lot of doctors. So a lot of doctors just are comfortable with just dismissing integrative natural medicine altogether, just being like, it's kind of almost emotionally easier to dismiss it than to just say, wow, like I'm not operating with a full toolkit here, and there's a lot of unfairness and corruption in this like sometimes it's easier just to dismiss than to deal with the complexity of it. So I have compassion.
Right.
But there are doctors and naturopaths and acupuncturists and health coaches and people who really are offering alternative paths that are highly effective, like even more effective than a lot of Western medicine. But I just recently had a friend almost die, and Western medicine saved him. He had an aortic dissection and and stroke. He almost died twice. Like, I'm so grateful that his life was saved. So I do not want to down. I just want to acknowledge, let's be real, there are issues here, there are limitations here. And if you look at natural medicine, there's a lot of misinformation, and there is some woo-woo out there that's not really effective. And so you want people to have the best of both. You want people to have the best of modern technology and the best of traditional wisdom. So the best of traditional wisdom, we have to go back to the root, and the root is the gut, like the roots of a tree. If a tree is unhealthy, if a plant's unhealthy, you look at the root, you look at the microbes, you look at the soil. That's more, the leaves can give you some information for sure, but you really have to go. And that's how humans are. And I used to hear that when I was first learning about Chinese medicine and natural medicine, and it didn't make sense to me. And the more I'm kind of bridging the world of science and the world of these other alternative sciences, I want to call them, then I start to really see these connections, and it becomes crystal clear. Like even skin, almost any skin issue is a toxic burden, emotional stress, and gut problems, which are all tied together, right? And we make 90% of our serotonin in our gut, and serotonin affects mood. We know about that because
it's crucial to mood.
Antidepressants are like given to slow down our use of, put us on a serotonin budget, so that it doesn't really give us more so much as it just kind of meters it out so we don't use it all up at once and then have none. But I like a supplement, like until you can heal your gut and get to the root, because really most emotional mood disorders are gut-brain axis disorder, which I'm about to tell you about. But, there's something called 5-HTP that it's basically a precursor to serotonin that then can convert to melatonin, which helps you sleep, it boosts your immune system, it helps fight cancer, kill cancer, and it helps regulate your mitochondrial health, which has to do with how much energy you have, your longevity, how you age, things like that, like how much energy you have, how good you feel. So like just this one neurotransmitter is tied, and it's also tied to peristalsis and the ability to poop and focus and memory and concentration. So this one neurotransmitter has dozens of functions that have downstream effects in the body. So that one thing's off and your life is off. And that's just one neurotransmitter. And I really prefer personally, instead of antidepressants, to work with cleaning up gut infections, taking down inflammation, opening detox pathways, and having people work with some kind of neurotransmitter support until they can heal their body tissues and restore them to full health, right? I think some people are so destabilized mentally that they might need pharmaceuticals because they don't have the wherewithal to do the whole thing. That's not always the case, but for most people with depression and anxiety, even severe anxiety, they're all alternatives to pharmaceuticals. So that's Then there's GABA. GABA is a neurotransmitter that calms us down. It does a lot of other things too, but this is like the calming neurotransmitter. And if we're under too much stress or there's too much of demand for GABA and we're not making enough, then we can be severely anxious. And so if we have any kind of chronic inflammation in our gut, it's going to mean we have inflammation in our brain. There's a gut-brain axis. Right. Logically, when we evolved, like the same cells divided to become our brain and our gut and intestines and our whole digestive tract. And then the vagus nerve is this nerve complex that starts up in our cervical spine and branches down through all the organs. And it's meant to calm us down or soothe us to get out of fight or flight. So we tend to operate in a lot of fight or flight because we're exposed to a lot of toxic stress, which I explained the broad spectrum of what I mean by toxic stress. And so we're really struggling. And so our body becomes hypervigilant and hyper alert. You can also have your brain wired for hypervigilance and hyper alertness, have trauma, because you grew up in an environment like I did where there was someone who had mental illness that was constantly getting angry or losing their temper or criticizing whatever, being emotionally abusive, then you just kind of learn to you don't learn to relax because you just waiting for the next shoe to drop. You're waiting for the next upheaval, right? And so when we're stressed out, it causes inflammation. So when our stress hormones are triggered, inflammation is triggered, and so is insulin, which is actually a fat storage hormone, and it's tied to heart disease and cancer. So again, just that emotional stress component and the neurotransmitter factor of the gut-brain axis are super important. Vagus nerve, meaning the ability of the vagus nerve to soothe and calm us, is something we can build through practices that I like to also teach in workshops and with coaching.
Awesome.
So, and then the third neurotransmitter I was just going to visit today is, what was that? Oh, dopamine.
Dopamine? I was going to say, it's probably dopamine.
A lot more, lots of them, but these are just some.
Yeah, but these are kind of the heavy hitters, I guess.
And the ones that So dopamine, I like to call dopamine because it kind of gives you that excited anticipation. It can be what makes you excited to have sex or to eat something yummy or to go on an adventure, or to meet a new person or whatever, or to explore something in your career, or go on a hike. It doesn't matter. Like anything that gives you this like excited anticipation of something yet to come, that's dopamine. And when that's not right. Oh, and it also, it's at play when it's off. It's at play in ADD, attention deficit disorder, ADHD. It's also at play in Parkinson's. So all these neurotransmitters have like lots and lots of jobs that are simultaneously mental and emotional, because the mental, emotional, and physical are all the same. Everything physical creates perception and emotion, and all perceptions and emotions have a physiological component, like a biochemical and cellular component. So it's not separate at all. They're inextricably interlinked, right? So when those neurotransmitters get thrown off because of toxic stress, which could also be because of infections and pathogens, also external environment, lifestyle, whatever, then that will actually create inflammation, neurotransmitter chemical imbalances. And so if you go just like take a pill to kind of shut down the symptom, but you're not actually getting to the root of why this body is in the first place, you're not going to heal the person. And the problem with these pharmaceuticals is they might be okay. Your body can clear out the toxic effects of them if you just take one Xanax to ride an airplane. I think there are way better ways to calm yourself down if you have a phobia of flying. I have herbal alternatives and all kinds of alternatives or mind-body practices. But say you did decide to take a Xanax to get on an airplane, probably over the span of your life, it's probably not going to have a huge negative impact. But if you take it every day for months, years, or decades, then they cause something called paradoxical side effects, which can actually make you more anxious or even psychotic, especially if you drink alcohol while you're on them. I know 2 people have been literally psychotic from mixing benzos, Xanax, and alcohol. Benzos or So this is something we really want to think about. And one of the reasons I decided to have this conversation about mental wellness and how it is connected to gut health is because I recently went through something really painful where I got parasites. I had mold resurgence in my house. So I was having toxic mold symptoms combined with parasites and then another kind of infection. I'll just spare that whole conversation because that's a whole rabbit hole. But the point is I had multiple pathogens and infections that were burdening my immune system, causing inflammation, causing gut problems, and which were causing absorption and nutrient problems, which were causing and then I was also going through something in my personal life where I was experiencing tremendous grief and loss and feelings of betrayal. And I was going through something in my professional life involving 2 people that I've really loved so much for many years where same emotions applied. So I was going through external stressors with interpersonal stressors, but then I was also, I was infected with cooties. And so in my house. And so what ended up happening is it kind of crept up on me a little at a time, and they kind of came in hodgepodge, and it took me a while to really figure out what was going on, but I was just getting more and more anxious, more and more anxious. I was just shaking all the time. I was waking up out of breath. Like I'd wake up in the morning, I'd have these disturbed, agitating dreams. I'd have trouble sleeping, and then I'd wake up in the morning and my first breath would be like, because I was just, my heart was beating so fast, and I felt like my diaphragm was up in my heart. Like it was just, then I would feel heavy and depressed. I would feel hopeless. Every little thing would stress me out. Like, and I was having trouble functioning. I felt mentally ill. Like I felt unstable, and I felt really depressed and hopeless. Like I just felt like life was cruel and pointless, and like it really sucks. Like I didn't have my.
So what were you able to do for yourself at that point?
So I went from hopeless and helpless to just saying, okay, I have to draw on this information I have, and I basically took plants. I did consult with my mentor, who's amazing, who's well trained in functional medicine and a wide array of things. I mean, she's amazing. And so I worked with her, and we figured out what was going on. And I was able to take binders for the mold, hire some people to clean up the mold in my house. I was able to take herbs for the infections that are really effective. I was able to get more detox support. I was able to, try and think what else we did. It's a very broad spectrum, but anyway, I basically, we came up with a protocol. Oh, and I got a colonic. That made a huge difference. I don't think that alone would have. I think it's all of it together. It's like putting the pieces of a
right. Well, several different things, because like you've demonstrated earlier, everything is connected. So you're going to have a very holistic approach.
Yeah, and I also realized that in my depression and anxiety, maybe some loneliness, I was getting on screen time a little too close to bedtime, and that was also a problem because it was affecting creating more anxiety. So the thing I was doing to try to alleviate the anxiety was actually causing more of it, which is very common in people and humans. When we're in fight or flight, we don't necessarily go into more of a limbic system thinking where we're kind of more of an ego-centered, scared little animal thinking. So we think very short-term, me now. We forget about ourselves connecting to others, the big picture, and the long-term implications of our decisions. We just go a little narrow. So when we're stressed out and we need the most love and nurture is when we tend to be the most self-destructive, right? Yeah. So I was still eating clean. I was still trying to exercise when I had enough energy to do it and move. I was meditating and doing pranayama and breathing things that really do help. They weren't able to really give me as much traction as they would if it was just situational. If it was just situational, I would have been able to like really manage all this through therapy and breathing and meditation and yoga and movement and all, walks in nature and all the things I was doing. But because I had all these infections and these pathogens that were causing inflammation in my gut-brain axis, then I was like climbing a greasy flagpole. I couldn't get traction. Yeah. So that's why it's super important that even if you have a super healthy lifestyle, to really, you may sometimes need herbs and supplements to get infections down. Some genetic tendencies your body has. But you know, if you have an unhealthy lifestyle, you can take all these herbs and supplements, and you're still not going to be able to heal yourself because you have to hit it from all sides. So anyway,
absolutely.
So yeah, one of the things I forgot to mention in my protocol was I did take GABA support and I did take 5-HT, and those helped with mood, and the GABA helped with anxiety. I also took some new support for thyroid, which is going into hyperdrive. It was a vitamin. And then, so anyway, so I combined this whole synergy, and within about 6 hours of the new protocol, once I got everything wrangled up and was able to take it all, I felt significantly better. My whole perspective on life changed, my outlook changed. And what I realized is I've been experiencing anhedonia, which is the inability to feel pleasure. I couldn't feel my heart. I struggled to feel any love, like if I could feel pleasure briefly, but I just felt like for most of the day, I felt no access to my heart or love or pleasure. And I just felt so bad about myself and everything around me. And I didn't even really reach out to friends as much as I think would have been supportive because I felt so unlovable, which is But anyway.
But thank you. Oh man, thank you so much for sharing all of this. I mean, I think this is, I appreciate you being very vulnerable. I think that is so important, and so I'm really grateful that, you're willing to share this so that people can learn from your journey. So I guess as we're kind of wrapping things up, what would you suggest to someone who, is going through some of these issues, who might be feeling depression, anxiety, or I guess kind of anywhere on that spectrum, I guess, where would you start on that healing journey? Or even just like with gut issues, I mean, again, it's all connected, but kind of what are some tips?
Yeah, Well, just like off the top of my head, I think it's really important to get help and to know what's really going on. So to get to the root of that. And one of the things we offer with our coaching, not to just toot our own horn, I
No,
don't
it's okay.
be your coach.
It's what you do. Like, this is what you do. Like, this is, yeah, people need to know.
With people is I like to really get a big perspective of their life and just see all the components and where they need more nurture. What are their nurture gaps? Where do they need more nurture? I also like to help people connect with a practitioner that's gonna, there are different options that work with different budgets and different degrees of information you can encounter and depending on what you're open to. But like find the best match for someone who's going to get to the root of what's going on biologically, which is affecting our emotions and thoughts, and look at lifestyle. So we look at lifestyle, we look at, your detox pathways, your emotions, your critters on board, just like the health of your organs. We look at all these different things and try to see how we can bring your whole self back into balance. And I don't want to criticize people who go to a psychiatrist and get meds, but I just want people to know that might be a good stopgap, so you can just have the wherewithal to do things that are going to actually get to the root and heal you. So I just really, and educate yourself. And that's why Scott and I do what we do. We definitely had other options for things to do with our lives, but we don't want everyone to have to reinvent the wheel. We don't want people to go through this suffering for as long or as much as we did. It was pretty awful, like how long it took us to put these pieces together and how much time and effort and money and education and all the things we put in to learn this. And we would like other people to be able to have a little bit softer path. So we just want people to educate and inform themselves, and then that way you can be empowered to have sovereignty over your own body and make the best decisions that will have the best outcomes for the life you want to live. And I am offering a workshop this coming Sunday. The Sunday, July 20, is it 28th?
Yes, I believe it's 28th.
It's Sunday, July 28th from 3 to 6 p.m. at a yoga studio. So this is on Oahu in Hawaii. There's a town called Kailua, and there's a yoga studio called Aloha Yoga Kula, the Pali location, so right off Pali Highway. So I'm going to be teaching a workshop there. You can go to alohayogakula.com, Kula with a K, and register for that. We need you to sign up as soon as possible so we can get a head count. And so we're going to be covering a lot of this, and really not just the overall understanding, but action steps that you can take in your life. And we'll definitely talk about herbal alternative antibiotics, how to boost your microbiome. If you participate, you get an ebook called Rethinking Clean and Good Ways to Get Dirty. It's about how to optimize your microbiome and thus your gut and immune system and brain. And we also have—
I believe this workshop is called Love Your Guts, right?
Yeah.
Yes, this is the Love Your Guts workshop.
It's like cutting edge science for and reversing chronic illness or something like that. But it's called Love Your Guts, and that's the whole point. It's about love and self-nurture and how to encourage science and spirit to take good care of yourself in a way that feels good and pleasurable in your life. And it comes with an ebook and a video on self-abdominal massage and things to help your gut feel better. And you actually get a natural high from some of this breathing and abdominal massage. It feels good. And
yes.
Yeah, we're really excited to share this information with people. Our website is spoonfulofparadise.com. We have chef services, yoga, fitness, movement kind of stuff, and we have our coaching, which has both online offerings and one-on-one coaching. We do work long distance with the coaching. So this guy is in Nevada City, California, and he works around the whole Bay Area. So if anyone's over there and wants to work with this guy, he's amazing. So
perfect.
Yeah, I think
perfect.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being interested in what really matters. And you have such a beautiful perspective on things and take on things and understand.
Oh, thank you very much. And thank you so much for giving your time, because, this is really important stuff. I think that a lot of people I think awareness is starting to grow, and what you're doing is absolutely expanding that. And so that's really important. And I appreciate everything that you taught us here today, because I think we covered a lot of good ground, kind of redefining, reassociating, good things with health, and, just redefining what it all means, and then also getting some really practical advice. So I will be sure to have your website on as well when I post this, folks. So for those of you watching, please be aware, above this video, there will be in the description absolutely the information to join Dr. Traci's workshop if you are here in Oahu.
And I'm open to suggestions. We want to help create what we call a culture of nurture. So we want to help create a culture of nurture together. So if you anyone has suggestions for how to get information out, how to reach more people, like I'm open, Sky is open. So we really just want to empower as many people as possible. And so, yeah, we're in love with what we do, and we want you to be in love with what you do in your life too. So.
Perfect. I love that. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Traci, and we'll probably be having another interview soon, so everybody can just wait for that.
Okay. Thanks so much.
All right. Take care. Bye, everybody.